With me now are Reid Oakes, the Executive Vice President of Analytics at HIMSS, and Ann Snowdon, who's Chief of Scientific Research at HIMSS. I'm excited to have both of you here. This is a big subject, this world of informatics right now and analytics. But I want to start with talking about digital health trends. What is happening in the world that is exciting the two of you?
I think the major evolution, as we've seen the pandemic kind of take hold, and healthcare has really changed in terms of the theaters of care that it's delivered in. Digital has certainly taken a larger piece of that in terms of how we interact, how physicians and clinicians deliver care, how they engage, how patients interact with the health systems that they're working with. So, the channels have changed, the ways that we measure outcomes, the ways that we measure the impact on healthcare has changed. And that's forced, I think, the industry to really rethink how we look at growth, how we look at at changing and driving healthcare for the next decade. So what's next, really, what's coming, right?
Yeah. Ann?
I think it's a very interesting time in healthcare. This pandemic has had devastating impact virtually every global citizen. And when you think about HIMSS helping every human everywhere to realize their full health potential, that's a pretty important agenda today, perhaps more so than it ever has been. And the only way we're going to possibly execute that agenda is by advancing, accelerating, and scaling all of the many opportunities digital health really offers to connect to every person everywhere meaningfully with digital tools or other opportunities of their choosing, not a health system's choosing, to help them stay healthy and well. And for me, that's a center point for digital health, which is incredibly exciting.
I feel like this year certainly put healthcare systems in a somewhat uncomfortable place, only because they were figuring it out and recognizing that they had to move faster. So do you feel that this moment in time is actually different in terms of the way that change actually might occur?
I think that there are different ways that it's going to occur. I think that we're seeing different incentive models. I think we're seeing organizations approach digital healthcare from a different perspective. I think we're seeing it prioritized differently in people's approaches. And folks are kind of really looking for beyond more solution set, right?
Yeah.
So really, don't just implement a piece of technology, but we have to really think about all the different facets of a solution and how we put them in place to be able to actually solve a problem.
Right.
So we're seeing a difference in prioritization, certainly.
Right. Well, there's also so many more things that are coming up at a faster rate that I think in some ways, to actually make some sort of clarity, how do you accept that some things are out there that actually, for all their good efforts, are noise? They're not going to fit in or whatever else. Ann?
Yeah, so true. I think at where we are now, it's clearly evident we can change very quickly. Health systems worldwide literally turned on virtual care like a light switch. Prior to that, we were glacial in our pace of change, and it was the nature of the system. We've now proven and demonstrated we can change overnight.
Yeah.
The question becomes, strategically, how, where, and how quickly to achieve what outcomes should we be changing, given what we've now learned in terms of, yes, it's possible. The worst thing that could do, as you suggested, is, all of the many different possibilities get thrown in, and now you lose the forest for the trees, right? Yeah. So I think that noise is a very, very critical component of what we need to think about. What change, how quickly, in what order, with what dynamics, with what stakeholders at what tables to achieve best possible outcomes for, don't forget, every human everywhere. So I think that's really the interesting agenda and the strategy that faces us now, which is pretty exciting.
I think the opportunity to look at it on a global basis certainly is there. You have such a disparity between countries in the evolving, certainly growth countries, kind of more of the mature countries in terms of digital healthcare status. I think we're seeing a pretty concerted effort to be able to increase engagement at the at the citizenry level, looking at how do we actually bring more folks into the process, how do we, cost, quality, and access have always been a key focus, but now I think we're looking at it at a different level with different technology, different solutions that a lot of folks have tried to cobble together. I think we're starting to see really that become the next real priority.
It's interesting to think about COVID and certainly recognizing that for the patient population, it was disastrous. So I think that's unquestionable. But on a perspective that you guys are speaking from, was COVID a good thing or a bad thing?
I think as an individual and for the global population, it was a devastating thing. But I'm one of the optimists that would say never waste a crisis. If the worst thing would be that we don't learn from it and we don't build in, embed, and scale those lessons learned across every global health system. And I think HIMSS is very uniquely positioned to drive that learning. And if there's one thing we've figured out with this pandemic, it's we need to learn faster. We need to connect to each other and understand what are you seeing and understanding, and how are your patients managing this horrendous virus that we can now help ours learn from and perhaps make it better for population to population. So
we were, earlier this morning, we had Pascal Lardier, who works in HIMSS International, who spoke about the fact that one of the benefits that happened from his perspective is that countries were actually reaching out to each other.
Yes.
Oh my God, you had it in Italy, here's Spain, saying, Italy, what did you guys do?
Right.
You know, and starting to kind of collaboratively, you know, start to make change.
Yep, certainly a lot of collaboration. You know, there's a lot of incredible progress you can make when everybody kind of works together. So, you know, I think you have to really grow on that, you know, and kind of say, hey, let's take that big crisis, let's really focus on how to be able to respond to it, and take the learnings, and instead of you know, after the crisis passes, kind of returning back to the old, you know, kind of ways of doing business. I think one of the biggest challenges is to be able to how to figure out how to be able to take the learnings from that and use it to really take the next step as an industry.
Right. So switching gears here a little bit, one of the themes that has become clear at HIMSS is really talking about operational efficiencies in terms of how things are changing in terms of how business is done. So from your perspective, what do you guys think is defining success from an operational standpoint for the systems you're involved with or the space in general?
I think we've had a lot of customers over time that have implemented a lot of technology. I think that there's a new set of measurements out there that really come back to, you know, and how you operationalize the outcomes that you're actually driving.
What are those measurements, for example?
Well, so just, you know, I mean, we could talk, there's a series of clinical outcomes that, you know, Ann can speak to.
Okay.
But as far as being able to actually operationalize around those outcomes, how do we look at what the technology as it implements really delivers? How does it actually create value across our communities, across our provider landscape, driving those operational efficiencies and having impact on equity and global sustainability, those sorts of things are really keys that we're seeing. So.
Good. Ann?
I think some of the key outcomes for success is also the operational efficiency is only as valuable as the outcomes that it can achieve for the population that health system serves. So for me, success is, were we able to sustain and support and enable the population we serve, whoever that might be, to be healthy and well? Whether we're in a pandemic scenario where we're desperately trying to prevent transmission of that deadly virus, or we're in a non-pandemic scenario where people need the support and tools and data and information and knowledge to make good health decisions to realize their full health potential. So that would be one. The second is, I think is critical, and that is, do we have a sustainable, healthy workforce? We have seen devastating impacts on our health workforce. The Americas, the highest rates of poor outcomes in their health workforce compared to any other geography. So the efficiency and outcomes or success of any health system for me is also about to what degree can they support and enable and sustain that very high performing workforce. That's the group that's at the really point of care, that's engaging with every person everywhere to help them stay healthy and well. So for me, it's very two-way street.
You know, it's interesting that HIMSS did a post-pandemic kind of healthcare trends survey, and they actually found that for clinicians, over 65, even though there were 30% that wanted to leave the workforce,
Right.
there were 65% that actually would recommend the field to people coming up the pike. Why? How?
Because that's what's the inherent driver behind any clinician. I'm a nurse. It is not about anything except, can I make a difference in people's lives?
Yeah.
There is nothing more rewarding in the world for a clinician than that. All the other thing is quite secondary. Is it efficient? Is it fast? Is it, doesn't matter. Did I make a difference?
Yeah.
If you're one of those people that's driven towards helping other people, there is no better discipline in the world than a health discipline, no question.
Right.
And that'll never change, whether you're in a pandemic, post-pandemic, pre-pandemic, and that's why.
Well, and arguably for those people, although it was certainly extreme, I mean, there was no better moment to try to shine. And the chaos certainly, you know, enfolded it, but still.
I think it speaks to the tremendous resilience in our health workforce that really took center stage in this unprecedented time. And it really speaks to what a critically important resource that is to protect and support and enable. And I think that's another role digital health has to play here, is make those work environments phenomenally easy, intuitive. Data and things happen when and where they need to, so that I, with that patient, can make a difference in their lives. And that's really, I think, behind some of those findings.
That's the role of the technology, right? Is to really come in behind that. Technology is not the thing that lays on hands and helps to actually, you know, help the patient right there at the point of care. But if you can leverage the technology to be able to help bring better data, to be able to bring better insights into the therapies needed or the next step in the course of care, being able to help facilitate that increase in really capacity in there. That's really what it's about. That's really what the technology can help.
To add to that, Reid, so certainly all of you guys, from your perspective, putting it out there, providing more things for these patients. Talk to me about patients' expectations, because we're in now a role of consumerization, right? You know, in the real world, I want it now. This is what I, you know, expect to get. So what do you see from your viewpoint for them?
Health consumerism is a thing that's been coming for a long time. It came with retail. It came with all the other, you know, the ability to order a car, you know, on your phone, those sorts of things, right? We have, as consumers, we have expectations now. I should be able to order everything from, you know, any moment, right? And our expectations of health have now, I think, evolved, because with the response to the pandemic, with digital healthcare kind of expansion, we've seen a tremendous amount of being able to do virtual consults, and now that's really kind of shifted. We've seen the trend really kind of move that way about where we do our consults and where we do maybe some of our initial triage of you know, emergent, non-emergent issues, those sorts of things. So I think that the expectation is there. So again, it's about whether we maintain and keep our foot on the pedal for being able to continue to accelerate those, or whether, you know, we kind of fall back a little bit. I think the broader industry really sees an opportunity to be able to keep that foot on the gas, and let's continue to evolve digital healthcare, bring our health consumers in, be able to kind of create those better experiences for everybody.
Because you're meeting them where they
really
expect to be,
about.
right? You're
Exactly.
having these moments that are actually working, that immediacy. And anything you want to add?
People live in digital societies, literally. Healthcare is not exactly deeply embedded in those digital societies, but they had to be during this pandemic. So now I think the expectations are exceptionally high, and it is not one size fits all. The way it needs to work to meaningfully connect with a provider for a baby boomer doesn't look the same as our millennials or as our younger generations, young families. So I think it's about personalizing and engaging meaningfully with whatever level of connectivity the consumer, the individual wants, not what we think they should have. So it's not digitizing today's healthcare system. It's actually creating digitally enabled healthcare that meaningfully supports and enables every population a health system sees.
Wow.
We've seen the variety. We've seen organizations that have tried to simply automate their traditional delivery mechanism. And we've seen folks that have really just built a grounds up, hey, this is how we're going to really establish a digital health ecosystem to be able to facilitate that personalization, that meeting the patients where they
Right.
are.
I mean, one feels flat and one-dimensional, and one feels much more three-dimensional, right?
Yep.
And in real time.
Yep.
Oh, it's breathing. You guys have been awesome. Thank you so much for being here, and have a great time at the conference.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you so much.